Admiral Taman stood in the command center of the massive warship. His forearms moved across the control panels with practiced ease. The screens around him showed star maps that stretched across 47 different solar systems. All of them belonged to the Galactic Dominion. All of them were under his control. "Sir, we have found another planet," said Lieutenant Kyung-ho, his voice filled with excitement. "It's in the outer rim, far from the main trade routes." Taman's 6 eyes focused on the young officer. "Show me," he commanded. The main screen changed to display a small blue and green planet. It looked peaceful, almost beautiful. White clouds moved slowly across its surface. Large oceans covered most of the land. "What do we know about the inhabitants?" Taman asked. Dr. So-young stepped forward. She was the chief scientist on the ship, and one of the few people who could speak freely to the admiral. "The planet is called Earth by its people. They call themselves humans. Our long-range scans show they are still very primitive." Taman laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "How primitive?" "They still use radio waves for communication," So-young said, reading from her datapad. "Their fastest ships burn chemical fuel. Most of their energy comes from burning dead plants and animals from millions of years ago." General Wu Jin, the head of military operations, moved closer to the screen. His thick armor made heavy sounds with each step. "This will be easy then." "How long since they learned to fly?" "About 150 Earth years," So-young replied. "But sir, there is something strange about their development speed. They went from riding animals to space travel in less than 200 years. That's very fast compared to other species." Taman waved one of his hands dismissively. "Speed means nothing if they started from nothing. Look at their technology now. Radio waves? Chemical fuel? My personal transport ship is more advanced than their best military vessels." The other officers in the command center began to laugh. They had heard similar reports about hundreds of other worlds. The pattern was always the same. The Dominion would arrive with superior technology. The local inhabitants would try to fight. Then they would surrender when they realized how hopeless their situation was. "How many ships do they have in space?" Wu Jin asked. So-young checked her scanner readings again. "Our sensors detect maybe 50 or 60 small vessels in orbit around their planet. Most of them seem to be for research or communication. We see no weapons that could threaten our ships." 50 ships, Taman repeated slowly. "We have 200 ships in our invasion fleet. Each one of our ships could destroy 10 of theirs without taking damage." Captain Ji-hoon, the diplomatic officer, raised his hand. "Sir, should we try to contact them first? Some species surrender without fighting when they see our power." Taman considered this. The Dominion had rules about conquest. They always offered surrender terms first. It was more efficient than fighting. Dead planets paid no taxes and produced no resources. "Yes, we will offer them the standard terms," Taman decided. "Complete surrender. They will give us control of their planet and government. In return, we will let them live and work for the Dominion." Dr. So-young stepped forward again. "Sir, I recommend caution. These humans have some unusual qualities. They seem to adapt and learn very quickly. Maybe we should study them more before we make contact." The command center fell silent. No one had ever suggested caution when facing such primitive technology. General Wu Jin turned to stare at the scientist. "Are you afraid of creatures who still burn dead plants for energy?" Wu Jin asked, his voice full of mockery. "I'm not afraid," So-young said calmly. "I'm being careful. Good science requires careful observation." Admiral Taman walked to the large window that showed the stars outside. He had conquered 37 worlds personally. He had seen every type of resistance possible. Some species tried to hide. Others tried to run to distant planets. A few had even tried to fight with primitive nuclear weapons. None of it had worked. The Dominion had 3 advantages that made them unbeatable. First, their energy shields could stop any weapon the primitive species used. Second, their plasma cannons could destroy entire cities from space. Third, their ships could travel faster than light, while most planets they conquered had barely learned to leave their own solar systems. "Dr. So-young," Taman said without turning around. "How long have these humans been sending radio signals into space?" "About 100 Earth years, sir." "And in all that time, have they received any answers? Any contact with other intelligent species?" "Our records show no successful contact between Earth and any other civilization." Taman nodded. "So they are alone. They have no allies, no advanced weapons, and no experience fighting anyone except themselves." He turned back to face his officers. "This will be our easiest conquest yet." The admiral moved to his command chair and activated the fleet communication system. 200 warships waited for his orders. Each ship carried enough firepower to level a continent. All ships prepare for jump to the Earth system, he announced. We will arrive in battle formation and demand immediate surrender. If they refuse, we will demonstrate our power by destroying one of their moons. After that, they will have no choice but to submit. The bridge crew began their preparations. Navigation officers calculated the jump coordinates. Weapons officers charged the plasma cannons. Shield operators activated the defensive systems that had never been penetrated by enemy fire. Dr. So Young remained at her station, but she looked worried. She had studied the data about Earth more carefully than anyone else. The humans had gone from horse-drawn carts to space stations in just 2 centuries. No other species in the galaxy had developed technology that quickly. But Admiral Tae-min was already thinking about his victory celebration. Earth would become the 48th world in the Dominion. The humans would join the millions of other conquered species who worked to build ships, mine resources, and expand the empire. Jump in 30 seconds, announced the navigation officer. Tae-min smiled with satisfaction. By tomorrow, the conquest of Earth would be complete. The primitive humans would learn what every other species had learned. The Galactic Dominion was unstoppable. Jump, he commanded. The stars outside the window suddenly stretched into long lines of light. The 200 ships of the invasion fleet disappeared from their position at the edge of the galaxy. When the light faded, they would be in orbit around the small blue planet called Earth. Admiral Tae-min expected to find a few dozen primitive ships that would surrender immediately when they saw the awesome power of the Dominion fleet. He expected the humans to beg for mercy and accept whatever terms he offered them. He never expected what he actually found waiting for him in Earth's solar system. The Dominion fleet came out of their light-speed jump expecting to see a few dozen primitive human ships scattered around the blue planet. Instead, Admiral Tae-min stared at his viewing screen in complete shock. Thousands of ships waited for them in perfect formation. That's impossible, whispered General Wu Jin. Our scouts said they only had 50 or 60 vessels. The human ships were arranged in precise geometric patterns that stretched across millions of kilometers of space. Each formation looked like it had been planned by master tacticians. The vessels themselves looked different from anything the Dominion had ever seen. They were sleek and smooth with no visible weapons or engines. Sir, said the communications officer, we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. Put it on the main screen, Tae-min ordered. His voice sounded less confident than usual. The image of a human female appeared on the screen. She had short dark hair and calm brown eyes. Behind her, the bridge of her ship looked clean and modern. The technology visible in the background was clearly advanced, though it followed design principles the Dominion didn't recognize. Welcome to the solar system, the human said in perfect Dominion language. I am Commander Yeonsu of the Earth Defense Fleet. We have been expecting you. Admiral Tae-min tried to hide his surprise. How did this primitive creature know their language? How had they been expecting the fleet? I am Admiral Tae-min of the Galactic Dominion, he replied. You will surrender immediately and prepare for occupation. Resistance is pointless, Commander Yeonsu smiled slightly. Admiral, we have studied your previous conquests very carefully. We know exactly how your ships work, what weapons you carry, and what tactics you prefer to use. She gestured to someone off-screen, and new information began scrolling across the human display. Tae-min's eyes widened as he recognized detailed specifications for Dominion warships, including classified information that should have been impossible for outsiders to obtain. Your flagship is a Class 7 battle cruiser, Yeonsu continued. Length 2,847 meters. Primary armament, 12 plasma cannons capable of 847 terawatts peak output. Defensive systems, 3-layer energy shields powered by 6 fusion reactors. Current shield strength, 94%. Captain Ji-hoon, the diplomatic officer, stepped forward. How do you know these details? Our ship specifications are classified military secrets. You've been broadcasting everything on quantum frequencies for over 60 years, Yeonsu explained patiently. Your communication encryption is based on mathematics we solved decades ago. We've been listening to every conversation, reading every technical manual, and studying every tactical report your fleet has transmitted. Dr. So Young moved closer to Admiral Tae-min. Sir, this changes everything. If they can decode our communications, They know about all our weaknesses. Taemin refused to accept what he was hearing. Impossible. Our quantum encryption has never been broken by any species in the galaxy. That's because no other species approached the problem the way we did, said a new voice. Another human appeared on the screen beside Commander Yonsu. This one was a male with gray hair and kind eyes. He wore simple clothes, but the equipment behind him looked incredibly sophisticated. I'm Engineer Daeho, the man said. I've been working on your encryption for about 30 years now. Your basic mistake was assuming that quantum mechanics works the same way for all intelligent species. He held up a small device that looked like a crystal cube. Humans developed quantum theory along different mathematical paths than your scientists did. What seems impossible to you is elementary to us. Admiral Taemin felt his confidence beginning to crack. You're still primitives with inferior technology. Your ships may look impressive, but they cannot stand against our plasma weapons and energy shields. Would you like to test that theory? Commander Yeonsu asked politely. Before Taemin could answer, she gave a signal to her crew. On the long-range sensors, the Dominion officers watched in amazement as the human ships began to move. They didn't accelerate slowly like normal spacecraft. Instead, they simply appeared in new positions instantly, as if they could teleport across space. Sir, said the sensor operator, I'm reading impossible energy signatures from their ships. The power levels don't make sense according to our physics. Engineer Daeho smiled. Admiral, your species discovered faster-than-light travel by brute force. You built bigger and bigger engines until you could punch holes through space-time. Humans learned to ask space-time nicely if we could borrow a shortcut. To demonstrate, several human ships simply faded out of existence and reappeared on the other side of the Dominion fleet. They moved without any visible engines or energy emissions. Impossible, General Wu Jin muttered. Nothing can move like that. Your physics say it's impossible, Daeho agreed. Human physics say it's Tuesday afternoon. Admiral Taemin decided to end this conversation with a show of force. Target one of their ships, he ordered. Fire a warning shot with half power. Show them what Dominion weapons can do. The flagship's main plasma cannon charged up and fired a brilliant beam of energy at the nearest human vessel. The beam should have vaporized any known type of matter. Instead, it passed harmlessly through the human ship as if the ship wasn't there. Your turn, Commander Yonsu said. 3 human ships fired their own weapons simultaneously. The beams looked like liquid light and they moved in ways that hurt to watch. When they hit a large asteroid floating in space, the rock didn't explode or melt. It simply stopped existing, leaving behind empty space. How? Whispered Captain Ji-hoon. We don't destroy matter, Engineer Daeho explained. We convince it that it never existed in the first place. Much more efficient than your approach. Admiral Taemin tried to understand what he was seeing. Our sensors show your ships have no armor, no shields, no visible weapons. How are you doing any of this? We're using different rules, Yonsu said simply. Your technology is based on controlling energy and matter through force. Human technology is based on probability mathematics and dimensional engineering. She gestured again, and more technical information appeared on their screen. This time it showed detailed analyses of Dominion weapons and defenses, complete with mathematical proofs of 17 different ways to defeat each system. For example, Daeho said, your energy shields work by creating a barrier that absorbs incoming energy. Very impressive engineering. But our weapons exist in 11 dimensions simultaneously. Your 3-dimensional shields can't stop something that's attacking from directions that don't exist in your physics. One of the Dominion ships tried to retreat, activating its faster-than-light drive to escape the system. The ship's engines charged up normally, but when the jump sequence activated, nothing happened. The ship remained motionless in space. We've temporarily adjusted the local space-time geometry, Yonsu explained. Your faster-than-light drives can't function until we allow them to. Think of it as a temporary speed limit in this area of space. Admiral Taemin sat down heavily in his command chair. In less than 20 minutes, everything he believed about Dominion superiority had been proven wrong. The humans hadn't just matched their technology. They had approached the same problems from completely different angles and found solutions the Dominion had never imagined. What do you want? He asked quietly. We want to talk, Commander Yonsu replied. We've been preparing for this conversation for over 200 years. We have a lot to discuss. Dr. So-young stepped forward. Sir, I recommend we listen to what they have to say. These humans are clearly more dangerous than we anticipated. Taman looked around his bridge at officers who had never known defeat. Now they all stared at the human ships with expressions of fear and confusion. "We're ready to hear your terms," he said finally. Admiral Taman refused to believe his fleet was truly helpless. The Dominion had conquered hundreds of worlds using proven tactics. Surely these strange humans could be defeated with proper strategy. "All ships, formation Delta 7, he commanded. "Surround their fleet and prepare for coordinated assault." The 200 Dominion warships began to move into their battle formation. It was a pattern they had used successfully against 46 different species. The ships would spread out in a sphere around the enemy, making escape impossible, then attack from all directions at once. But as the Dominion ships moved into position, something unexpected happened. The human vessels simply ignored the formation completely. Instead of trying to escape or counter the encirclement, they moved to positions that made no tactical sense. "Sir," said Tactical Officer Hyojin, studying her displays with growing confusion, "their positioning doesn't follow any known military doctrine. They're leaving themselves completely exposed to crossfire." General Wu Jin smiled grimly. "Good. These primitives don't understand real warfare. When we attack, they'll have nowhere to run." "All ships target the largest human vessels," Admiral Taman ordered. "Full power synchronized attack. Fire when ready." 200 plasma cannons charged simultaneously and fired at the same moment. The space between the fleets filled with brilliant energy beams that should have destroyed anything in their path. Every single shot missed. "What happened?" Taman demanded. The sensor operator stared at his instruments in disbelief. "Sir, our targeting computers show direct hits, but the weapons passed through empty space. It's like the human ships moved at the exact moment we fired." "That's impossible," General Wu Jin said. "Nothing can move that fast or predict our firing patterns." Commander Yansu's voice came through the communication system, sounding almost apologetic. "Admiral, you're using predictive targeting based on momentum and trajectory. That works fine for objects that follow normal physics. Human ships don't follow normal physics." On the main screen, Engineer Daeho appeared again. He held up a small device covered in blinking lights. "This is a probability calculator. It tells us where your weapons will be fired before you decide to fire them. We simply make sure we're somewhere else when the energy arrives." Dr. So-Young studied the sensor readings from the failed attack. "Sir, I'm detecting massive gravitational distortions around their ships. They're somehow manipulating space-time on a local level. Your species learned to travel between stars by pushing harder," Daeho explained patiently. "Humans learn to ask the universe for permission first. Much more polite, and the results are quite different." Admiral Tae-min was starting to feel desperate. "Launch the fighters. Small, fast ships can adapt better than large vessels." 50 Dominion fighter craft launched from the warships and accelerated toward the human fleet. Each fighter was piloted by an expert like pilot Sung Woo, who had never lost a battle in 12 years of service. Sung Woo led the formation, his ship dancing through space with incredible skill. He had shot down enemy aircraft on 30 different worlds. His reflexes were enhanced by military surgery, and his ship's computer could track 100 targets simultaneously. But as the fighters approached the human vessels, something very strange happened. Sung Woo's instruments began showing impossible readings. According to his computer, his ship was flying in 17 different directions at the same time. "Control, I'm getting system errors," he reported. "My navigation computer says I'm in multiple locations simultaneously." "That's because you are," came a calm voice on his radio. It was a human pilot speaking perfect Dominion language. "Your ship exists in normal 3-dimensional space. The area around our fleet exists in 11 dimensions. Your computer is trying to track all of them at once." Sung Woo tried to target the nearest human ship, but his weapon systems wouldn't lock on. Every time he thought he had a clear shot, his target seemed to be somewhere slightly different from where his eyes told him it should be. "This is impossible," he muttered, pushing his ship into an attack dive. "Actually, it's just mathematics," the human pilot replied. "Would you like me to explain the equations? They're quite elegant." Sung Woo fired all his weapons at once, spraying energy blasts across the space where the human ship appeared to be. Every shot missed, even though his eyes could clearly see the target directly in front of him. "How are you doing this?" he demanded. "We're not doing anything to your ship," the human said. "We've just changed the local probability matrix. In this area of space, the mathematical chance of your weapons hitting our ships is exactly 0. That's not how probability works." It is if you understand probability mathematics at the quantum level. Your weapons are still functioning perfectly. They just can't hit us because the universe has calculated that such an event is impossible. One by one, the other Dominion fighters reported the same problem. Their weapons worked fine, but they couldn't hit anything. Their targeting computers showed locks, but the shots went harmlessly into empty space. Worse, several fighters reported that their own systems were beginning to malfunction. Not because of enemy action, but because the local physics were too different from what their computers expected. All fighters returned to base, Admiral Taman ordered. He couldn't risk losing his pilots to this impossible situation. But when the fighters tried to return, they discovered another problem. Their navigation systems couldn't find the way back to the main fleet. According to their instruments, they were flying in straight lines toward their home ships. But no matter how far they traveled, they never got any closer. "We're caught in some kind of space distortion," pilot Sung Woo reported. "Distance isn't working the way it should." Dr. Min Ho, another human scientist, appeared on the communication channel. "You're not caught in anything," he said kindly. "Space is working exactly the way it always has. We've just introduced some additional geometric dimensions to the local area. Your ships are flying in 3-dimensional straight lines through 11-dimensional space. You're heading in the right direction, but you're missing your destination by about 8 dimensions." Tactical Officer Hye-jin studied all the sensor data from the failed attacks. Slowly, a terrible understanding began to form in her mind. "Sir," she said to Admiral Taman, "I don't think these humans are using more advanced versions of our technology. I think they're using completely different technology based on completely different science." "What do you mean?" the Admiral asked. "Every species we've conquered before understood physics the same basic way we do. They built bigger guns, stronger shields, faster ships, but they were all working with the same fundamental principles." Hye-jin paused, trying to find the right words. "These humans seem to have learned physics from a completely different starting point." Commander Yansu's image appeared on the main screen again. "Officer Hye-jin is correct. When humans first developed science, we asked different questions than your species did. You wanted to know how to control the universe. We wanted to know how to cooperate with it. The results," Engineer Daeho added, "are quite different. Your technology fights against natural laws until it wins. Human technology works with natural laws to achieve impossible things politely." Admiral Taman felt something he had never experienced before in battle: complete helplessness. His ships couldn't hit the enemy. His fighters couldn't navigate properly. His weapons were useless, and his defenses meant nothing against attacks that came from directions that didn't exist. "What do you want from us?" he asked. "We want to have a conversation," Commander Yansu replied. "But first, we need you to understand that this conversation will be between equals. Your fleet is welcome to stay in our system as guests, but you are no longer in a position to make demands or threaten anyone." Dr. So-young stepped forward. "Sir, I recommend we accept their terms. We need to learn how their technology works if we hope to defend against it." General Wu Jin looked at the tactical displays showing his completely helpless fleet. "This is humiliating. The Dominion has never surrendered to anyone." "You're not surrendering," Yansu said gently. "You're learning. There's a difference." Admiral Taman stared at the human ships that had made his powerful fleet completely irrelevant without firing a single hostile shot. For the first time in his military career, he was facing an enemy that didn't want to destroy him. They wanted to teach him. "We agree to your terms," he said quietly. "We're ready to talk." Admiral Taman had expected to be taken prisoner or forced to surrender his weapons. Instead, Commander Yansu invited him and his senior officers to visit the human flagship as honored guests. The moment Taman stepped through the airlock, he realized how thoroughly the humans had been preparing for this meeting. The corridors were designed perfectly for Dominion physiology. The gravity was adjusted to exactly what his species preferred. Even the air mixture was precisely what his people needed to breathe comfortably. "How long have you been planning this?" he asked as Commander Yansu led them through the ship. "About 200 Earth years," she replied. "We've had plenty of time to get the details right." The human ship was unlike anything Taemin had ever seen. The walls seemed to be made of light itself, glowing softly with patterns that shifted and changed as they walked. There were no visible control panels or mechanical devices, yet the ship obviously functioned with incredible sophistication. "Where are your computers?" General Wu Jin asked, looking around in confusion. "You're standing inside one," Engineer Daeho explained. "Human ships don't have computers." "They are computers. The entire vessel is a single thinking machine built from crystallized mathematics. Dr. So-Young stopped walking and stared at the walls around them. The ship is alive? Not alive in the biological sense, Deho said. But it is aware. It can think, learn, and make decisions. Right now it's having a conversation with your flagship's computer systems, learning about your technology. They entered a large meeting room where several other humans were waiting. One of them was analyst Yunbi, though Taemin didn't know that she had once been a Dominion intelligence officer who had secretly contacted Earth decades ago. Please, sit down, Commander Yansu said, gesturing to chairs that looked like they had been grown rather than built. We have much to discuss. Admiral Taemin and his officers took their seats, still trying to understand what they were seeing. The room had no visible technology, yet displays of information appeared in the air whenever someone needed them. First, Yansu began, we want you to understand that we know everything about the Galactic Dominion. We know about every world you've conquered, every species you've enslaved, and every military operation you've conducted for the past century, she gestured, and images appeared showing Dominion fleets attacking dozens of different worlds. Taemin recognized battles he had personally commanded. How do you have these records? He demanded. Analyst Unbi stepped forward and smiled sadly. Because we've been in contact with your victims for over 200 years. She waved her hand and the images changed to show something that made Taemin's blood freeze. It was a map of the galaxy showing communication networks connecting hundreds of worlds. Every planet the Dominion had conquered was linked to Earth by lines of light. Every species you defeated tried to send out distress calls before they fell, Yunbi explained. Most of those calls were never answered, but some of them reached Earth. We've been collecting refugees, recording testimonies, and gathering intelligence about Dominion operations for centuries. General Wu Jin stared at the map in horror. You're saying that every world we conquered was secretly in contact with you? Not every world, Commander Yansu corrected. Only about 90% of them. The others were too far away or didn't have the technology to reach us. Dr. Minho appeared in the room, though Taemin wasn't sure if he had walked in or simply materialized. With human technology, both seemed equally possible. We want to show you something, Minho said gently. But first you need to understand that we're not trying to hurt or embarrass you. We're trying to help you see the truth. The room around them changed, becoming transparent. Through the walls, Taemin could see space outside, but it wasn't the space he expected. Instead of his fleet of 200 warships, he saw thousands of human vessels arranged in formations that stretched to the horizon. This is our actual fleet, Yansu explained. What you saw when you first arrived was just a small welcoming committee. Dr. So-Young stood up and walked to the transparent wall. How many ships do you have? In this system? About 50,000 combat vessels, Minho replied casually. Across the galaxy, we maintain approximately 2 million ships of various types. The numbers were so large that Taemin couldn't process them. That's impossible. No civilization could build that many ships without us knowing about it. Actually, we didn't build most of them, Analyst Yunbi said. Remember all those worlds you conquered? The ones you thought were completely defeated? They've been building ships in secret for us for decades. She gestured again, and the display showed factories on dozens of different planets. All of them were producing vessels using human designs and human technology. Every world the Dominion occupied became part of our manufacturing network, she continued. Your conquered peoples weren't just hiding from you. They were preparing to fight back. Admiral Taemin felt like the universe was spinning around him. Everything he had believed about Dominion power and control was proving to be an illusion. How is this possible? He whispered. We had governors on every world, military bases, surveillance systems. You had those things, Commander Yansu agreed. But you never understood the people you were trying to control. Humans taught them something the Dominion never learned. What? How to hope. The room filled with images of the conquered worlds. But instead of showing defeat and slavery, the images showed secret schools where children learned about freedom. Hidden factories where weapons were built. Underground networks where people planned for the day when they could fight back. Hope is more powerful than fear, Dr. Minho said quietly. Fear only works as long as people believe they have no choice. Once they believe that change is possible, fear becomes useless. General Wu Jin looked at the displays showing uprising preparations on world after world. You organized all of this? We provided technology and coordination, Yansu replied. But the courage came from the people themselves. They were willing to risk everything for the chance to be free. Analyst Yunbi brought up another display, this one showing real-time communications across the galaxy. Right now, as we speak, every Dominion-controlled world is receiving a message. They're learning that the Earth fleet has defeated your invasion force. They're learning that the time for liberation has finally come. Admiral Taemin watched in fascination and horror as the display showed uprising signals being transmitted to hundreds of worlds simultaneously. The Dominion's communication networks, which he had always thought were secure, were being used to coordinate the largest rebellion in galactic history. "You've turned our own technology against us," he said with grudging admiration. "We've turned your technology into what it should have been all along," Commander Yan-Su corrected. "A way to connect people and help them work together, instead of a way to control and oppress them." Dr. So-Young had been studying the technical displays with growing amazement. "Your ships, your communication systems, even this room we're sitting in. None of it follows the physical laws we understand." "It follows physical laws," Engineer Deho said. "Just more of them than your species discovered. Humans learn to work with 11 dimensions of space-time instead of just 3. The results are quite different." "Why are you showing us all of this?" Admiral Taemin asked. "You've already proven that we're helpless against your technology. Why not just destroy our fleet and be done with it?" Commander Yan-Su looked at him with genuine sadness in her eyes. "Because destroying your fleet wouldn't solve the real problem. The real problem is a system that creates people like you, people like me, people who believe that the only way to be safe is to make everyone else afraid, people who think that strength comes from domination instead of cooperation." She stood up and walked to the transparent wall, looking out at the vast human fleet. "We don't want to destroy the Dominion, Admiral. We want to transform it. We want to help you build something better." Admiral Taemin stared at her, trying to understand what she was offering. "What kind of something better?" he asked slowly. 6 months after what historians would later call the Great Collapse, Admiral Taemin stood in what used to be the Dominion's Central Command Center. The massive space station had been transformed into something completely different. Where once there had been weapons control rooms and military planning centers, now there were meeting halls where representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered to discuss their shared future. Taemin no longer wore the uniform of a Dominion admiral. Instead, he wore the simple clothes of a coordinator in the new Terran Federation. His job now was to help former Dominion worlds integrate peacefully into the growing alliance that Earth had created. The work was not easy. Many species that had been conquered by the Dominion were angry and wanted revenge. Others were afraid that the humans would simply become new masters to replace the old ones. Taemin spent most of his days in meetings, helping people from different worlds learn to trust each other again. The Zelkari delegation is still refusing to cooperate with any species that served in the Dominion military, reported Coordinator Hyun Woo, a young human who managed diplomatic relations. "They want all former military personnel banned from government positions." Taemin nodded sadly. He understood the Zelkari anger. The Dominion had enslaved their entire species for over a century. But hatred would not build the kind of future the Federation needed. "Schedule another meeting," he said. "I'll talk to them personally. Sometimes it helps when they can see that even former enemies can change." The transformation had not happened overnight. In the weeks after the confrontation in Earth's solar system, Admiral Taemin had watched as the Dominion's control over the galaxy simply melted away. World after world declared independence, supported by human technology and coordinated by the vast communication network Earth had built in secret. Some Dominion governors had tried to fight back. Their efforts failed completely. Human ships appeared in their systems, disabled their weapons, and then offered the local populations a choice: continue living under Dominion rule, or join the growing Federation of Free Worlds. The choice was not difficult for most people to make. President Jin-A of Earth had addressed the First Galactic Assembly 3 months ago. Taemin had watched from the audience as representatives from over 200 worlds gathered in a vast hall built from crystallized, light and controlled mathematics. "We did not come to the stars to build an empire," President Jin-A had said, her voice carrying clearly to every corner of the great hall. "We came to find friends, to learn from other cultures, and to help build something better than any of us could create alone." The human president was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes, but when she spoke, even former Dominion generals listened carefully. She had a way of making complicated ideas sound simple and obvious. The old Dominion was built on fear, she had continued. Fear that there wasn't enough resources for everyone. Fear that other species would attack if given the chance. Fear that the only way to be safe was to make everyone else afraid. She had paused, looking around the hall at faces from dozens of different species. But fear creates the very problems it tries to solve. When you rule through fear, you teach people that violence is the only way to solve problems. When you hoard resources, you create the scarcity you were afraid of. When you attack others to prevent them from attacking you, you guarantee that someone will always be planning. Revenge. The assembly had listened in complete silence as President Jin Ae explained the principles of the new Federation. The Terran Federation is built on cooperation instead of domination, on the idea that diversity makes us stronger, not weaker, on the belief that the best way to be safe is to help everyone else feel safe too. Now, 6 months later, Taiman was still learning what those principles meant in practice. It was harder work than commanding a military fleet, but it was also more satisfying. Dr. So-Young had become one of Earth's chief advisors on interspecies relations. She was one of the few former Dominion leaders who had understood from the beginning what the humans were trying to achieve. You were right, Taiman told her as they walked through the station's gardens together. The gardens were one of the most popular new additions to the station. Plants from hundreds of different worlds grew together in carefully designed ecosystems that would have been impossible under the old military regime. Right about what? So-Young asked. About being cautious with the humans. You tried to warn us that they were dangerous. So-Young smiled. I was wrong about that. They weren't dangerous at all. They were just different. We were the dangerous ones. They stopped beside a small lake where children from several different species were playing together. Under the Dominion, such mixing would have been forbidden. Different species were kept separate to prevent them from cooperating against their rulers. I still don't understand how they did it, Taiman admitted. How did humans manage to stay hidden while organizing the biggest rebellion in galactic history? They didn't stay hidden, So-Young replied. We just refused to see them clearly. She pointed to a group of young humans who were teaching alien children how to play Earth games. Look at them. Everything about human behavior should have told us what they were really like. They make friends with everyone they meet. They share their knowledge freely. They solve problems by working together instead of fighting. They even make art and music just for the joy of creating beautiful things. Taimin watched the children playing and began to understand. We saw what we expected to see. A primitive species that could be easily conquered. Exactly. We looked at their technology and decided they were weak. We never looked at their culture and realized they were strong in ways we didn't even understand. A soft chime indicated that it was time for the afternoon assembly session. Taimin and So-Young walked back toward the meeting halls, where representatives from across the galaxy were working to solve problems through discussion instead of force. There's something I never told you, So-Young said as they walked, about my warnings before the invasion. What? I wasn't just being cautious. I had been in communication with human scientists for almost 20 years before your fleet reached Earth. Taiman stopped walking and stared at her. You were working with them. I was learning from them, she corrected. They taught me that science works better when people share information instead of hoarding it. They showed me what the galaxy could become if species worked together instead of fighting. She smiled at his shocked expression. The humans didn't defeat the Dominion through superior technology, Taiman. They defeated it through superior friendship. As they entered the assembly hall, Taiman reflected on how much his life had changed. 6 months ago, he had been the commander of an invasion fleet, confident that he could conquer any species in the galaxy through superior force. Now he spent his days helping former enemies learn to work together. It was more difficult than warfare, but it was also more rewarding. When he succeeded in helping 2 species resolve their differences, he felt a satisfaction that no military victory had ever given him. The afternoon session was dedicated to planning new trade routes that would connect isolated worlds to the main Federation network. Representatives from mining worlds sat beside delegates from agricultural planets, working out agreements that would benefit everyone. President Jinne was right, Taiman realized. Cooperation really was more powerful than domination, but it was also much harder work. As the session ended and delegates began filing out, Taimin looked around the hall one more time. 6 months ago, he had believed that the Galactic Dominion was the strongest force in the universe. He had been wrong. The strongest force in the universe was the simple human belief that different people could learn to work together for their mutual benefit. It had taken the humans 200 years to organize their quiet revolution. It had taken them less than 6 months to transform the galaxy. The Dominion had collapsed not because humans were better warriors, but because they were better teachers. They had shown the galaxy what was possible when people stopped being afraid of each other and started being curious instead. And in the end, Taman thought as he walked home through gardens filled with plants from hundreds of worlds, that had made all the difference.